In a world before supermarkets, freezers, or food delivery apps, how did entire civilizations survive and thrive off the land? Imagine feeding your family without a refrigerator, a knife made of stone, and no margin for error. What if I told you that Native American tribes across the continent had mastered not just the what of eating, but the why? Their diets weren't just survival-based. They were sacred, intentional, ingenious. This is not just a story about food. It's about harmony, strategy, and spiritual nourishment. Stay with me. What you're about to learn will change how you see food forever. The land provides diversity across nations. From the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest to the dry mesas of the Southwest, Native American diets were as diverse as the land itself. Tribes didn't just eat what was nearby, they formed deeply intelligent food systems, tailored to their environments, and passed down over generations. In the Arctic, the Inuit relied on seal, whale, and caribou, where fat wasn't a luxury, but life. In the Great Plains, the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Comanche centered their world around the American bison, using every single part of the animal. In the woodlands, the Iroquois cultivated the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, a trio that grew together, nourished the soil, and created balance in the body. Food was never just fuel. It was medicine, tradition, and identity, sacred hunts, strategy, spirit, and sacrifice. Hunting was never random. It was ceremony. Before the bow was drawn or the spear was thrown, prayers were said. Songs were sung. Tobacco might be offered. The animal's spirit was acknowledged, thanked, even before it was taken. For example, the Plains tribes didn't just chase buffalo. They coordinated massive communal hunts using stampede tactics, guiding herds into natural corrals, or over cliffs like head-smashed-in buffalo jump. This required planning, cooperation, and generational wisdom. In the Pacific Northwest, the Haida and Tlingit timed their salmon harvests with tidal cycles and spawning seasons. Nets, traps, and wooden weirs were engineered with surgical precision. To overfish was to offend the river spirits, so they didn't. Each hunt was a negotiation, not domination. One did not take from the land. One received, gathering wisdom, plants, roots, and nature's pantry. While hunting often captures the imagination, the true backbone of many native diets was plant-based. Women, often the keepers of ecological knowledge, harvested roots, seeds, berries, and herbs with meticulous care. The Apache dug for mesquite beans and agave hearts. The Anishinaabe tapped maple trees for syrup and collected wild rice by canoe, beating the stalks gently so rice fell into baskets, never wasting a grain. Gathering wasn't casual. You didn't just pick a plant, you spoke to it. You asked. You gave thanks. Some tribes would only harvest one out of every 4 plants to ensure regrowth. Others used controlled burns to rejuvenate berry patches and prairie grass. This wasn't foraging. It was botany, land management, and spiritual stewardship. Preservation and innovation. Food for the winter moons. Without refrigeration, preservation was everything. Native tribes used smoke, sun, wind, and ash to extend the life of their foods. Meat was often dried into jerky or pounded with fat, and berries into a dense survival food called pemmican. Corn might be nixtamalized with lime to make it more nutritious. Fish were smoked, fruits were sun-dried, and nuts were stored in underground caches. Among the Pueblo peoples, entire communities cooperated in harvest and storage, using multi-room adobe granaries to hold corn for years. In the Arctic, meat was buried beneath permafrost. Food wasn't just about today. It was about the 7th generation, ceremony and feast, when food becomes spirit. In native traditions, food often arrived at the intersection of the sacred and the communal. The harvest was celebrated, The hunt was honored. The meal was a time to give thanks, not just to the animals and plants, but to the sun, the rain, the soil, and the ancestors. The Iroquois held green corn festivals to mark the first harvest. The Hopi performed snake dances in hopes of rain for their crops. Among the Lakota, feasting was inseparable from storytelling, prayer, and drumming. To eat together was to remember together. Food wasn't just consumed, it was shared, sung over, and woven into the soul of the people. Tools of the trade, from stone knives to bone hooks. Food procurement required ingenuity. Stone arrowheads weren't just rocks. They were engineered projectiles with balance, weight, and purpose. Fishing hooks carved from bone, traps woven from reeds, grinding stones polished by decades of use. Every tool told a story. The Inuit carved snow knives to cut blocks for igloos and butcher seal. The Chumash of California built plank canoes to fish deep waters. The Cherokee used blowguns made of river cane to silently hunt small game. These weren't primitive tools. They were the technologies of a people deeply attuned to their surroundings. Food as identity. What you eat is who you are. In native cultures, food was identity. It was language. It was inheritance. To eat acorn mush among the Miwok was to honor your grandmother. To fish with a net tied by your uncle was to remember his hands. To share corn at a potlatch was to declare your lineage, your generosity, your belonging. Colonization disrupted these foodways, often violently. Forced relocations, buffalo slaughters, and boarding schools broke ancestral links. But indigenous food sovereignty is rising again, with native chefs, farmers, and youth restoring old seeds, reviving old recipes, and reclaiming what was never lost, their connection to the land. Beyond survival, a food system with a soul. When we hear the term indigenous diets, many of us tend to picture something frozen in time, a relic of the past, untouched by progress. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Indigenous food systems were, and are, living, breathing, adaptive ways of nourishing not only the body, but the spirit and the land itself. They were deeply sustainable, profoundly relational, and infused with ancestral wisdom passed down through generations. This wasn't just about survival. This was about connection, harmony, thriving in balance with nature, not in spite of it. Today, as climate change accelerates and industrial agriculture strips away biodiversity and meaning from the way we eat, we find ourselves at a crossroads. But indigenous foodways offer us a path, not just back, but forward. A way of eating that honors seasonality, respects limits, and sees food not as a commodity, but as a sacred exchange. Imagine if we approached every meal with that kind of reverence. Imagine if every bite we took carried with it the echo of gratitude, not just for the flavor or the calories, but for the journey, the sacrifice, the community. So the next time you grab a snack from the shelf or heat up something in plastic, pause. Remember the hunter who whispered thanks to the deer that gave its life. Remember the grandmother whose hands knew the rhythm of stone and maize, whose songs were part of the nourishment. Remember the people who never drew a line between wild and home, because the land was never separate from life. These food systems were not driven by efficiency or profit, but by relationship, a relationship that held space for respect, ceremony, and care. They didn't just eat to survive. They lived to give thanks. Every meal was a prayer, every harvest a celebration, every loss a lesson. And perhaps, as you sit with these thoughts, you feel something stir, a curiosity, a longing, a desire to reconnect, not just with food but with meaning. That's why Totem Vision exists, to share these stories, to invite reflection, to spark dialogue. If this resonated with you, if it moved something in you, then maybe, just maybe, it's a sign. not just to listen more, but to be part of this remembering. There's a whole world of wisdom in our roots. Don't let it pass you by. Stay open, stay humble, stay grounded, and above all, stay reverent. Because in the end, we are not just what we eat, we are what we honor.